So of the companies that are successful at introducing and maintaining and sustaining lean IT, what is the one thing? There are many things, but what's the one thing that is present in all those companies that are successful? And what's the one thing that's challenged in those companies that are not as successful? Could it be? And so I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a list. First of all, the thing that came up over and over was leadership. Leadership. The companies that were successful at lean, that could show real results and sustain change, had leaders that did more than understood what lean was. And I'll talk about those in a minute. But I said, I wonder if I could make a list of the top 10 things I've seen in the most effective leadership and how that would actually drive a successful transformation. So I started my list, and I ended up with 28 things. And I said, well, that's too many. I want to boil it down to 10 things. So I trimmed it down, and then I shared it with 6 CIOs of some of the companies that I've had a chance to work with. And I got their opinions as well. And I made some adjustments, and I'm going to share that with you. But the things that I'm going to talk about, first of all, I have seen, they're witnessed. So it's not theory. This is actually things that I've seen. The results have been sustained for at least 3 years, in most cases 5 or 6. But lean IT is fairly new, so it's hard to find examples that are much longer. And by no means is the list complete. It's just a partial list. So let's move into it. First of all, I'm going to use 2 terms, leaders and managers. And I believe, this is just my own opinion, but I believe that there is a distinction between the two, a very significant distinction. When I use the term leaders, I'm talking about the C-level people in your organization that are responsible for setting the vision, the strategy, the objectives, what we're going to accomplish, who we are. Basically, creating alignment of the values of the organization to the values of the department to the values of the individual. So typically, leaders are responsible for creating systems. At least that's the way it used to always be taught in business schools. The leaders would create and lead the innovation. The managers, on the other hand, were expected to execute the vision, actually run the tactics, responsible for results, and make adjustments to the work systems to get the results, basically by check and adjust. Now, these roles have definitely started to blend, and I see in some companies many managers that are very much part of the creation of the work systems, and leaders that are also part of the check adjust. So I believe the lines are a little blurred, but when I talk about managers, I'm talking about the person that people see every day, not the C-level folks. So as I put this list together, I came up with a list and I looked at it and it said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And I thought, that is extremely negative. That's not going to go over well. I thought, really, there is a positive and a negative way to say anything or to think about anything. So I said, I'll try to be more balanced. So I'll take half of these and make them positive, and the other half and keep them negative. So several people have mentioned Mr. Toyota, and there is so much wisdom that has been left on leadership from this gentleman. But I love this quote. It's one of my favorites. Ultimately, there's no special secret to the Toyota production system. We're just doing the obvious things thoroughly without omission. This is my most favorite part, as a habit. As a habit. It's simple but difficult to consistently do across large organizations. So I'm a yoga instructor. I've been a yoga instructor for many years. And in yoga, we learn it takes 40 days to make or break a habit. 40 days. So you must meditate for 40 days. You must try a new posture for 40 days. And you really can't change. To quit smoking, it takes 40 days. So I always say, when we're trying to do something new, I want leaders to try this, whatever it is we're talking about, for 40 consecutive days. Now, if you miss one day, it's not a problem, but the next day is day one. So it must be 40 consecutive days. It's a great trick. Try it on yourself. What would happen if you had, say, 10 days in the bank? Would you want to miss a day? No, it's like you're wasting 10 days. So you'll stick with it. So it takes 40 days. So here's number 10. It's a countdown. Number 10, this is something that I see all the time that we cannot do. It is death to lean transformation. Delegating lean. Okay, how many people, first of all, how many CIOs do we have in the room? Several. But the number one thing I hear when I'm doing training at workshops, what do you think people say afterwards? They say, you have to get the PowerPoint to work. No, they say, I wish my boss was here. How many people have been at something and say, I wish my boss was here? They need to hear this. The leadership needs to hear it. But what I see in many organizations is we say, well, we have a center of excellence. We have a lean department. We've taken a director in one of the areas, and he'll be in charge or she'll be in charge of lean. It simply doesn't work. Or we outsource lean. How do you outsource lean? You say, we'll have Mike come in and lead the lean transformation. Now you might say, well, why would I say that? It's because it's not sustainable. You can't have an outside resource driving your lean program. It doesn't make any sense. So first of all, delegating lean, not at all good. Here's something that I've seen work that you really, leadership, it has to be the people that do this, and that is support learning by doing, not learning by workshop, not learning by online lean modules, not learning by mail order, green belt, black belt, lean training. None of that works. The only thing that works is, yes, you need, first of all, most importantly, you need to develop lean IT coaches, internal coaches. So from day one, you start with an external coach. But the idea is to keep me around as the least amount of time possible, not the most amount. So the first thing we do is we say, who are the lean coaches within the organization that we can groom? If you haven't identified those people, you need to immediately. The next step is we start to introduce standard work by having standard lean IT training, not manufacturing-based examples of bicycles and television sets, because the IT people don't care. It's got to be lean IT-based with examples from IT. Next, improvement projects and daily Kaizen are an expectation before the first training. Everybody knows this is what they're going to be expected to do. Lean is not optional. Everybody will do it. And we have an expectation of 2 to 4 hours a week you'll be working on lean at a minimum, and you must do at least 3 Kaizens a year. Everyone, there are no exceptions, everyone in the organization has to do this. When you make lean optional, people say, I don't have time. And it will not transform the organization. Here's a plus to number 9, and that is make it visual and no technology. This is really hard in IT. What I mean by that is you go low tech. It's got to look Post-it notes. It's got to be messy. If you're a neat freak, you can do something like this. This is a little nicer than this. But you go low tech. If you're multi-site, you simply use a handheld webcam. But you keep it low tech at least for the first 6 months. It's very important. The IT people want to put it in SharePoint and they want to automate, and that's not the point at all. Number 8, believing that leading is the same thing as command and control. I see this all the time. The idea is leaders actually go out and they say, we are doing lean. Now go do it. They don't explain why they're doing lean, what the purpose is, and they don't have a consistent message. Some people call it an elevator speech. So I'll go to an organization and I'll ask 10 people, why are you doing lean? And I get 10 different answers. That's not good. It confuses people. It's not respect for people. Leading with humility is all about saying, I'm a leader, but I'm learning too. I don't have all the answers, and I'm comfortable with that. A lot of leaders are not used to that at all. They feel that it's a purpose to be strength. To be strong, we put up a facade up, and we pretend we know what we're doing. It's also involving everyone in the organization, respect for people. So here's a plus. Number 7, having a strategy and communicating it. I can't tell you how many companies I've been in where I love to talk to the people on the shop floor in IT, the people that are running the service desk, the people that are writing the code. And I ask them this simple question: can you tell me how your work contributes to the goals of the organization? Guess what I get when I ask that question? A lot of blank stares. A lot of people that cannot articulate how their work contributes to the goals of the organization. When I ask them what is the strategy of the company, they sometimes know, but if I ask them what is the strategy of IT, often they have no idea. We must communicate this, and in the best companies, what I've seen is the role of the manager is to articulate the strategy in terms of daily work, to always put work in the context of strategy. This creates alignment. So what we want to do is make it clear how your work contributes to your team, your department, to IT, to the division, to the company, and in the best organizations I've seen, people can explain how their work contributes to the community. That's a sense of purpose, and it really drives much better culture. Here's a bad one. Not understanding what you're getting into before you announce to your organization that we're doing lean. So I see this a lot. We really don't know what it's going to take to get the job done, but at a town hall meeting, the CIO stands up and says, we're doing lean. We're doing lean, and you'll be hearing more about it in the future weeks. Your manager will tell you about it. But what they don't know or don't understand, perhaps, is the level of commitment, the amount of time, the potential amount of money, and the challenges that are ahead. See, typically we downplay the challenges. This is hard work. I mean, we've been talking about it for 2 days. This is very, very difficult. The culture in many organizations is command and control in IT. There's a lot of fear in IT. If we're really honest about it, I've worked in IT for many years. When we have problems, what do we do in IT when we have a problem? What do? Somebody said we hide it. Or we fix it as quickly as possible. Then we go to our boss and we say, well, yesterday the database was down, but it's okay now. Correct? So we have a culture where problems aren't transparent and there's a lot of blame that goes around. So you've got to realize what the culture is, what the politics are, the momentum, the inertia, and the fact that you are going to have failures and setbacks. And I don't believe most leaders realize what they're getting into. So at the first bump in the road, they can't handle it. Here's an important one, and I don't see this very often, but in the companies that have done this right, they've got huge gains. Involve the leaders and the managers in lean training before the staff. Why is this important? The reason it's important is when you take your staff members and you give them lean training, they run out and they're all excited and they fill in an A3 and they've got a value stream map, and who do you think they go to with questions? The manager. And the manager knows this much about lean. In many companies, they've had maybe 1 hour or 2 hours of training, but the team just had 3 days of intensive Kaizen. True? I see people shaking their heads. Then we all run to the manager, and we say to the manager, I have a question on my A3, or I don't really understand flow. Can you help me? And what does the manager do? The manager is terrified. They have no idea what they're talking about, and the manager feels threatened. Now, here's an important point, and it's so obvious, but we don't talk about it. People do what their manager talks about. It's plain and simple. If I go to my manager and my manager says, how are you doing on your project? Have you done your time report? When are you taking holiday? How's your family and children? But my manager says nothing about lean or continuous improvement. What does that tell me about lean? It says it's not important. Who do I need to make happy to be happy in my job? One person, and one person only. It's the manager. So we have to have the managers on board. The only way the managers are on board is if the C-level people, if their bosses are on board. So basically what I'm saying is the CIO and his leadership team must be able to teach and coach Lean IT. Anything less than that, and we're really kidding ourselves. Now, I was very impressed with the last presentation because could you tell that was the CIO, correct? Could you tell he understood what he was talking about? It was quite clear. He understood lean. It wasn't like he was saying a few slogans that he heard in a seminar. He understood it at the level of his gut. He knew inside what he was talking about. So he has credibility. Do you think the people in the organization, in the IT organization, know that Lean IT is real and that it's not optional? It's clear. So they have the results. Again, everybody has to be involved. It can't just be pick and choose. Here's a negative. Not managing IT and information as an integrated value stream. Now, we've talked a lot about this over the last 2 days. But IT is so siloed. We have so much focus and expertise in our technology areas that we don't know or appreciate the flow of information. So we focus on silos. We also, I believe, are missing the point with ITIL. We're missing the point with ITIL. How many people are ITIL shops here? A couple? A few? Okay, so ITIL is wonderful. It's a framework of better practices. There's some good stuff to it. However, on my next slide, I'm going to point out that I don't think we're practicing what we're being certified in ITIL. But we basically need to start involving our customers and our end users in all our Kaizen work, not just part of it. And we saw in the last example, that company is certainly doing it. Here's an important one I'm not seeing in many companies. We need to start managing information as a precious asset, as an asset. So how do we manage our financial assets? Very tightly. We have accountants, we have audits, we have standards. How do we measure our physical assets? Very tightly. We record them, we track them, we appreciate or we depreciate them. How do we measure our and monitor and manage our information assets? Very, very loosely. Too much of the information is tribal knowledge, and when those people retire, we're going to be in big trouble. So I believe leadership needs to really start looking in terms of a value stream and an IT asset. Now, I mentioned ITIL. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but if you go back and look at the original ITIL literature, it's beautiful. But what it describes is a business value created stream where we align IT strategy, we design that strategy and the manifestation of that strategy, we plan a change management transition, and then we launch. This is a beautiful model. But guess what most people are doing with ITIL? They get certified, and then they forget all about this. Once you pass the test, it's gone. Guess where we live? We live right here. We live in this small little corner of the ITIL world, which basically says, this is operations, this is development over here. And we squabble and fight, but basically we just fight fires all day. It's reactive. It has very little to do with lean or continuous improvement. The answer's in front of us. I mean, when I saw this ITIL model, I said, this is a beautiful thing. What planet do these people live on? Because it's not most of the companies that I work at. So, number 3, developing your people. Developing your people. Toyota talked a lot about this, about people development. I don't see it a lot in the IT group. Now, there's something I like to talk about. It's called a dual focus. A dual focus. And it's the focus of leaders and managers. What do you think the dual focus is? What do all leaders and managers focus on? Number one thing they focus on, because they're held accountable for it, is what? Results. Perfect. Give this man a round of applause. So they focus on results, and everybody focuses on results. However, they're missing at least 50% of the focus. Is results at any cost going to work? If I can get financial results by working my people overtime and by scaring them or burning them out, is that a long-term solution? Obviously not. What we need to do is have managers focus and leaders focus on 2 things: results and behavior. I want results with ideal behavior. Guess what ideal behavior is? It's lean thinking. Ideal behavior is the only strategic advantage that really exists in the world, and that's your ability to solve problems better than the competition. That's it. Most leaders are so focused on results that they are not looking at the other side of the equation. How am I getting those results? The only way I can get those results is by developing my people and developing and modeling lean thinking and lean behavior. Now, the staff have a dual focus too, but their focus is a little different. Their focus is, I always like to say, everybody in the company has 2 jobs. Do your work and improve your work. If you're only doing your work, but you're not improving your work, you're doing half a job. Even if you're the best in your department, if you're not doing improvement work, you're doing half of what we're paying you to do. So this dual focus is very important, and the only way it can work is if everybody's developing people. The only way we can develop people is if our leaders and our managers can be true coaches. You can't be a true coach if you don't understand deeply and if you haven't done it yourself. You can't do it. Number 2, this is common, not actively going out and building trust among your employees. First of all, trust requires people to feel safe. So you have to be comfortable with the uncertainty of experimenting with something you do not understand. Leaders have to be comfortable knowing that not every experiment is going to be a success. You've heard the term trial and error? I prefer the term trial and discovery. It's not an error, it's always a discovery. If we do X, we'll get Y. We didn't get Y, we got Y prime. Fascinating. What does that tell us about the current situation that we didn't know before the experiment? Showing vulnerability. One of the best CIOs I've ever worked with, I couldn't believe it. He was with his leadership team, and they were having a meeting, and he said, I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer for that, and I need your help. And he was sincere. You don't hear CIOs say that too often. So being comfortable enough to show vulnerability, acknowledge a strength or a weakness, and this comes from the Agile community. Fail quickly. You want to experiment. If you're going to fail, do it fast. Don't do it in 6 months. Do it in 6 minutes. And then if you, quote, fail, there's no blame. It's just learning. Again, this has to be first leadership that understands this, then management, then you can go to staff. Most companies, no, we'll train our staff, we want a Kaizen, and we expect $500,000 in savings in the first 6 months. And it just doesn't work. Number one, leading by example. Leading by example. The only way that I've ever seen this work is leadership participates in the training, in the Kaizen, in daily PDCA. They show up to the report outs, and they come to the stand-ups. So has anybody ever heard of the three-tiered communication system? Three-tier communication, daily stand-up. You know daily stand-up? So at the daily stand-up, who's at the daily stand-up? The team. Okay, they meet usually between 8 and 9 o'clock. It depends on the team. It's a 10-minute stand-up. They go over what they're going to accomplish for the day. This is familiar. We all know this. What happens at 9 o'clock? Who gets together for the next stand-up? It's all the team leaders. They get together at the next stand-up, and guess what they do? They share what each team is doing. What happens an hour later? Who gets together? The managers get together with representatives of the leadership team. It usually rotates. At one company, they did this every day. Who do you think was the hardest people to commit to a daily stand-up? It was the leaders. It took 6 months. 6 months of whining and complaining before they did it. Now they won't stop doing it. Why? Everybody knows what's going on. They've eliminated over 50% of the standard meetings at the company. Meetings are killers. We all sit in meetings all day, and you can't do your work because you're in a meeting. Why do you think they were able to eliminate over half the meetings, the ones that are on your calendar every week? Why do you think they were able to eliminate them? People would go to the meeting and they would say, we already know that because we had our stand-up today. We know that there's a particular problem. We know that we're not going to be ready for the audit. We know that there's a challenge with the launch. We know that department's working overtime. We know we had a plant go down because they're talking every single day. So it's changed the game very much. Am I out of time? Oh, thank you. If you want to read some really good material on leadership, get on the lean.org site and look up Michael Ballet. Incredible work. I told him today, I said, I'm the latest member of your fan club. And he said, I don't have a fan club. I said, now you do. So one of the things, so you can go back. You really should read some of his material. It's very good. One of the things he points out, and I talked to him about this a couple of days ago. He says, I don't even remember saying that. I said, well, it's in writing. You did. He said, when leaders go out, they really should be focusing on variability, Mura, and overburden, Muri. Because really, if you think about it, people at the staff level don't have the authority to really make an impact, particularly on overburden or variability. But what we need to see is leaders out in the workforce talking to people. And at first, people are very terrified. What would happen if the CIO walked up to you and said, how's it going? What do we typically say if somebody of authority comes up and says, how's it going? What do we say? Fantastic. I was at one group. We were at a stand-up. They had just reported a lot of problems. And then it wasn't even the CIO. It was the IT director. He came up and he said, how's everything going? And the same group said, just great, just wonderful. And it was like 2 minutes later, they were in total denial. So this takes some time. This takes some time for leaders to be accessible and people to be honest. But leading by example is so important. The only way people can lead by example is if they really understand what they're talking about. So something else from Toyota, which is beautiful. He said, even when top management makes a decision, their role is merely to wave the flag. It's of no use if people don't follow. So think about the people you've followed in your life. They inspire you because they're genuine. They inspire you because they're credible. And to be genuine and credible, you must know your stuff. That's why lean can't be delegated. That's why we need leadership and managers that really are lean experts. The only way you can do this is to jump in and start swimming. You have to get wet. It's the only way. So what can you do? You might be sitting here and saying, well, now I'm thoroughly depressed. Thank you very much. Because my leader's not involved or not doing anything. What do I do? First of all, share this message with your leadership. If it's dangerous, send it to them anonymously. Print out the slides and just leave it, slide it under the door and run down the hall or something. But share this message, because when I share this with leaders, for many of them, it's a real moment of truth. They go, wow, we hadn't really thought of this. So it's not that they're bad people. They believe that we do lean by hiring a consultant or a big company, and they come in and do it to us. They do lean to us, and then we'll change. It won't work. You will spend millions of dollars, and you will have very little to show and no real change. Be aware of your circle of influence. Think about the people that you influence. Your behavior influences people. Identify that circle of influence and share this with them. And say, what can we do about it? What can we do? Lead by example. Everyone can be a leader, whether you're the CIO or you're working the help desk. You could lead by example. Are you using an A3? Do you use PDCA? Do you look for standard work? Do you ask yourself the degree of variation in the work I'm doing? Do you ask yourself how much tribal knowledge is buried in the work I'm doing? You can do this at any time. Here's 3 quick wins. Well, not quick, but 3 key wins that I've repeated at several companies that work quite well. Clues on where to look. Look for the on-ramp. The on-ramp is all the ways that demand comes into IT. You know what I mean by on-ramp? An on-ramp in the States is the road that goes onto the freeway. That's the on-ramp. So what is the on-ramp for IT? That's all the demand. Is it a ticket system? Could be. But what is the black market for IT? You know what I mean by the black market? Phone call, email, stop in the hall. What's that? Yeah, it could be anything at all. Okay, the first thing you need to do, get control on the on-ramp. Get control. Now, there's another on-ramp that we create in IT. It's called failure demand. It's when our solutions break and we have to fix them. So this is one key area to do Kaizen on that really makes a big impact very quickly. The next one is focus on quality and speed over cost and functionality. Now, I know that we heard a great presentation on cost control and target costing. I don't start there, particularly in IT, because I've seen what happens. If you walk into IT and you say, we're cutting costs by 50% because that's our new target, and it's either red or green, now go. What happens in IT? People freak out. Very good. That's the technical term. He said people freak out because they say, you're cutting my job, and they get scared. Okay, if people think, whether it's true or not, that you're starting to eliminate jobs, who goes and finds a job just like that? Your best people. Your very best people, they walk out the door, and you go, our expert in the Oracle database is gone. And he wrote nothing down. It was all in his head. And we're in big trouble. So I always lead with quality. If we lead with quality, we reduce rework, we free capacity. And then post-implementation reviews are rarely done properly. Who does a post-implementation review? Okay, we all do them, and they're called lessons learned, but they're not. I call them lessons documented. So we write this beautiful report, and we say, we didn't do this, we didn't talk to the customer, we didn't do integration testing, we didn't do regression testing, we failed to consider the needs of the end user, we didn't do proper user acceptance, whatever it is. And then we take that and we put it in SharePoint. And you might as well have not done it at all. It's a total waste because we're not learning anything. So this is a good one to do a Kaizen on. Look at your post-implementation review process. And here's a clue, what visuals can we use to ensure that lessons learned are learned and used next? And let the team discover how to make it visible. So these are just 3 areas. There's so many, but this is a great way to get started. So next steps, here's your homework. Reflect, check, adjust. So ask yourself in your organization, what is working and what's not working? What's working right now? I want to see more of that. But what's not working? Take this list and make it your list. Maybe you disagree with all 10. That's okay. Come up with your list. What do we need from leaders and managers? Because they are the leverage point. If they're not on board, it's just wishful thinking. I've done this for too long, and I've seen the ones that don't work, and I reflect on myself, and I say, I know what I did wrong. When I showed up, the client said, we just want you to work with a few teams, but leadership's too busy. And I said, okay, fine. And that was a mistake. It was a huge mistake. So please don't do that. Keep learning. If you're not looking at an A3 every single day, you need to start. You need to start. So it's so easy. Have a piece of paper in your back pocket. Start an A3. 40 days. See if you can go 40 days looking at an A3 every day and asking yourself, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? What do I know about the problem? Do I have supporting data? What's the current condition? Here's a couple of great questions. What do I know? How do I know it? And what do I need to know? Great questions to kind of go deeper. And finally, add to this list and share. Share. There's a great community out on LinkedIn or Twitter. Share these ideas. It's the only way we get better is by learning from each other. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the workshop.